one of the things that Republican lawmakers do not care about is being called hypocrites. They are hypocrites. They've proven themselves to be hypocrites. But when it comes to power being on the line, they'll go with power even if they know they're gonna be called hypocrites. And that's the case with filling the Supreme Court seat left vacant by Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. Now, one of the wishes one of RBG's wishes before she passed, according to what her granddaughter says, was, "My most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed." Republicans don't care. In fact, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, is determined to hold a vote on Trump's pick. Here's what he said. "In the last midterm election before Justice Scalia's death in 2016, Americans elected a Republican Senate majority because we pledged to check and balance the last days of a lame duck president's second term. President Trump's nominee will receive a vote on the floor of the United States Senate." But as you guys can recall, in 2016, Mitch McConnell specifically referenced the fact that Merrick Garland was the Supreme Court pick for Obama during an election year. So he was basically saying, it's an election year, this is not the right time, this is not when we do it. That was in February of 2016. Now fast forward to 2020, and there's a Supreme Court vacancy in September of 2020. And all of a sudden, Mitch McConnell says that he's going to go ahead and hold a vote for whoever Donald Trump nominates. Now, let me fast forward to Lindsey Graham. Following what happened to Garland in 2016, Lindsey Graham had some strong views on what should happen in the future. Let's take a look at what he said in 2016.
"This is the last year of a lame duck president. And if Ted Cruz or Donald Trump get to be president, they've all asked us not to confirm or take up a selection by President Obama. So if a vacancy occurs in their last year of their first term, guess what? You will use their words against them. I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me and you'd be absolutely right. We're setting a precedent here today, Republicans are, that in the last year, at least of a lame duck 8-year term, I would say it's going to be a 4-year term, that you're not going to fill a vacancy of the Supreme Court. This may make you feel better, but I really don't care. If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait to the next election. And I've got a pretty good chance of being the judiciary.
You're on the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold the tape.
He's on the record because he doesn't care if he decides to go against his own word and if people decide to call him hypocrites, because guess what? It doesn't matter. Republican voters are going to support Republican lawmakers and their quest for power. And that's what's happening today. On Saturday morning, Trump was resolute in his call for Ginsburg's seat to be filled immediately. He tweeted, quote, "We have this obligation without delay." A short time later, Graham responded, quote, "I fully understand where President Donald Trump is coming from," he said, retweeting the president's comments. "As to my view of filling a Supreme Court vacancy in 2020, I'd encourage you to review these most recent statements," he added, citing his remarks to NBC News in August that the rules have changed. They don't care, guys. And like, what amazes me, Cenk, and I know this probably drove you crazy too, is how many reporters over the weekend were like, oh, the hypocrisy. No one cares. No one cares. Yeah, they're hypocritical. They're gonna do what it takes to stack the courts with as many conservative judges as humanly possible. By the way, Chuck Schumer struck a deal with Senate Republicans to make that process a lot easier for them when it comes to the lower courts. And when it comes to a Supreme Court pick, of course they're gonna do what it takes to fill that seat with someone who is ideologically similar to them. It's just the way politics works. Anyone who thinks otherwise is incredibly naive and pathetic.
So almost all the reporters in Washington and almost the entire Democratic Party, and certainly all of Democratic leadership, act like it's 40 years ago. So what's the difference between now and 40 years ago? Well, what happened was a number of Supreme Court decisions in the late 1970s changed everything. They allowed corporations to give unlimited money to politicians, thereby purchasing the Republican and Democratic parties. And ever since that happened, the Republican Party became incredibly strong to the point of being absolutely vicious. And the Democratic Party became incredibly feckless when they used to be very strong under Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson would intimidate, bully, and get things passed and done. They were very effective. FDR, all these Democrats were super effective. Now they've become weaklings and losers because of the donor class. The donor class funds very strong Republicans and very weak Democrats. But the media still pretends that it's 40, 50 years ago. So the media will be like, oh my God, the Republicans are they being hypocritical? First of all, I mean, what kind of a schmuck are you? Your job is to cover politics and you didn't notice until this moment that Republicans are hypocritical. Because they pay you to be neutral, to say, and every editor you have yells at you, don't worry about the facts. Just make everything a he said, she said. Go get a quote from a Republican, go get a quote from a Democrat, and don't tell people what the reality is. Don't tell people that Mitch McConnell broke the record on filibustering, because that would make it seem one-sided. You know why? Because it is one-sided. And then he invented a thing called the McConnell rule, where you're not allowed to do Supreme Court picks in the last year before an election. And then he violated the McConnell rule 6 weeks before an election, because that's what Mitch McConnell does, and that's what the Republican Party does. And if you don't know that, and you still think it's 40, 50 years ago where they get into a bar, which is true, they used to, right? And they say, wait, are you a man of honor? Another one would say, okay, fine, I'm a man of honor. And they'd spit into their hands and they do a handshake deal. And Biden and every anchor on CNN and Tim Kaine and all these folks still think we live in 1973 where they're gonna spit in their hand and do a deal and the Republicans are gonna honor it. How stupid are you?
To which I say David Gergen. David Gergen, who is an advisor to Richard Nixon, he's now a contributor on cable news, probably gets paid top dollar for the expert commentary he provides, including incredibly dumb, short-sighted commentary that you're about to hear.
For all the obvious reasons it's so brazenly contemptuous of fair play, it is so hypocritical that I think you're going to see that the Republicans will pay a price at the polls this November over this issue. It is, I think, that, among other things, I think it makes it more likely that Joe Biden will win the election. It makes it more likely that the Democrats will take over the Senate. And if Biden is the president, and then next year when he tries to heal things, I think it's going to make polarization even more poisonous, almost irreversible.
That was insane. That's my opinion, but my opinion is based in fact and evidence. This has fired up Trump's base. This has fired up voters. And when it comes to the Supreme Court, I mean, historically speaking, Democratic voters seem to care less about Supreme Court nominees compared to Republican voters. I mean, Donald Trump has slapped his own base across the face over and over and over again. And when you ask them, what is it about Trump that you like? Why are you sticking by his side? They'll mention that Trump has stacked the courts with conservative judges. Also, Reuters had this poll to see how much of an influence this Supreme Court vacancy has for voters. And they found that 30% of American adults said that Ginsburg's death will make them more likely to vote for Biden, while 25% said they're now more likely to vote for Trump. But keep in mind that Donald Trump hasn't even really begun campaigning on this yet. This is an issue that a lot of voters care about. He's gonna really latch onto it and repeat how important it is for him to get reelected. And look, his voters were already super fired up to begin with. We'll talk about this later in the show. There are Trump supporters literally blocking people from voting, going into voting locations in Virginia, which has already begun early voting. I think it's crazy to think that these hypocritical politicians are gonna be punished. Bad boys for trying to accumulate power for Republican voters. They don't like that, okay? They wanna see that you're a man of your word. Come on, man.
It's just, no, look, I know why people are on TV. Almost every one of them is put on there to maintain the current system and to keep the currently rich and powerful going forward. And so I'm not under any illusion that they're doing news. But the way that it works is not that somebody writes a memo. Sometimes that happens, but more rarely. It's that there's a groupthink. And so they hire everyone that has the same groupthink. And in that groupthink, they've now become complete schmucks and totally disassociated from reality. So to Anna's point, you think that there are Republican and independent voters who'll say, this offends my sense of fair play. You know what? I'm thinking of switching over and voting for a Democrat. On which planet? No, come on, really? David Gerg, that's the analyst CNN brought on to say, well, it might offend their sense of fair play. Dude, inside your country club, that might be the case for 2 or 3 people, but that's not how voters are reacting now. Trump has lit the country on fire and they haven't backed away 1 inch from him. You think they care about decorum? How could you possibly think that? How could you possibly think that? No. And so they appreciate that Trump is gonna go out there and McConnell's gonna go out there and go, yeah, I'm gonna break every goddamn rule there is to make sure we have power and not the black people and the brown people. And the crowd's gonna go nuts, right? And our side is supposed to say, we're going to protect women. We're going to make sure that they don't rob you of your liberty and your freedom to do what you want with your body, your most private choices. We're gonna take their big government hands off of your body. They're disgusting, and we're gonna fight back against them. Have you seen any Democrat do that? I mean, you'll see AOC later, but have you seen any corporate Democrats? Have you seen any of that? Nothing. Instead, they're like, I do declare the Queensberry rules have been violated. We're going to beseech the American people that we go back to Queensberry rules, really, and we promise that we'll totally surrender because we will then prove that we are the nice guys, and that is why people will vote for us. And this is how Democrats lose all elections. Look, one last thing that's empirical. They said, you know what, the McConnell rule last time around, not confirming Merrick Garland, was an outrage, and it was. It broke every precedent. There was no such rule. They invented it. Everybody knew it. And people pointed out that it was completely outrageous to hold that up for over a year. And guess what happened? According to David Gergen and CNN and the New York Times and NPR, then the Democrats should have easily won the presidential election because the Republicans broke decorum. And who won? Do anybody remember? Oh, right, Donald Trump won. And did David Gergen or any other pundit on TV take that into consideration? Nope. It's 1973. And if we follow decorum, we will win. Insane. Let me say one last thing here. Brian Schatz is a Democratic senator. He tweeted this out, and there's something very telling in the middle of it. He said, it's going to be very hard after the procedural violence that Mitch McConnell has inflicted on the Senate and the country for anyone to justify us playing it soft next year just to satisfy pundits. I like what he's saying, but look at the assumption built in, and he's not wrong about the assumption. Every idiot pundit on TV will go on like David Gergen, and Schatz said this before Gergen went on. Will go on and go, oh, the Democrats should surrender to the Republicans and play really, really nice. And once they've landed another Supreme Court seat and we're screwed for 30 years and they take away all of our rights, then we shall declare to the American people that they are bad boys and we are good boys. Losers. You should never listen to those pundits. And by the way, Brian Schatz, again, he's right about all this. And all the other Democratic senators, turn off your TV. Those morons are costing you elections. If you actually care to win an election, you listen to a progressive pundit.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.